I never thought silence could feel heavy. For most people, silence is peaceful. A break from noise. A moment to breathe. But in my family, silence always meant something unfinished. Something waiting. My sister, Hannah, had been silent for as long as I could remember. The doctors used careful words when we were children. Selective mutism. Trauma-related shutdown. Possibility of recovery. But as years passed, hope quietly left the room. Hannah never spoke again. Not to our parents. Not to teachers. Not to me. She communicated through writing. Through nods. Through a soft look that said more than words ever could. And then there was her daughter, Lily. Lily was 5 years old when she came to stay with me for the first time. Small. Observant. Quiet, but not in the same way her mother was quiet. Her silence felt intentional. That was the first thing that unsettled me. I lived alone then. A modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing special. But it was safe. Predictable. After everything that happened in my life, predictability was all I wanted. Hannah and her husband, Mark, asked if Lily could stay with me for a weekend. Just 2 days. They said Lily needed a change of environment. A break. They said Hannah wasn't feeling well. They said it would help everyone. I agreed without hesitation. I was her aunt. And more than that, I loved that child. From the moment Lily arrived, I noticed how carefully she watched everything. Not in a nervous way. In a measured way. Like she was cataloging the world. She didn't speak. Not a single word. I assumed it was normal. Children mirror their parents. Hannah didn't speak, so maybe Lily followed her lead. But there was something else. Lily listened too closely. When I spoke, her eyes stayed on my face longer than necessary. When the house settled at night, she didn't sleep right away. When I laughed, she didn't laugh back. She studied why I laughed. It wasn't fear. It was awareness. That first evening, we ate dinner quietly. I talked enough for both of us, filling the space with gentle, harmless words. She nodded when asked questions, shook her head when she didn't want more food, smiled politely, like she understood manners better than most adults. After dinner, I showed her the guest room. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking around, then at me. Her eyes lingered on my face. I remember thinking, she wants to say something. But she didn't. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in my living room trying to read. The words wouldn't stick. Something about having Lily in my house shifted the air. Not bad. Just alert. Like the house itself was paying attention. The next morning was quiet again. I made pancakes. Lily watched from the table. When I placed a plate in front of her, she smiled. A real smile this time. Still no words. Later that day, Mark called. He spoke quickly. Too quickly. He asked how Lily was. If she had slept. If she was behaving. The word behaving stayed with me after the call ended. I told him she was fine. Polite. Calm. He paused, just long enough for me to notice. Good, he said. She's sensitive. Sensitive. Another careful word. When Hannah came on the line, she didn't speak, of course. But I could hear her breathing. Slow. Controlled. I told her Lily was safe. That she was doing well. Hannah exhaled softly. That sound stayed with me. That evening, something small happened. So small I almost dismissed it. I was folding laundry in the hallway when I felt eyes on me. Lily stood at the end of the hall, watching. Not staring. Watching. I smiled and asked if she needed something. She didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. She simply looked past me, toward my bedroom door. Then she looked back at me. And for the first time, her expression changed. Concern. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I told myself it was habit. Living alone does that to you. But the truth was, I didn't know why I felt the need. The second day passed quietly. We colored together. We watched cartoons. She leaned against me on the couch, light as a bird, but tense. Every time a car passed outside, her body stiffened. That wasn't normal. In the afternoon, I told her her parents would come the next morning. She nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She shook her head. I gently corrected myself. Tomorrow, Lily. They'll be back tomorrow. She looked at me again. Slowly, deliberately, she shook her head. No panique. No tears. Just certainty. I knelt in front of her. Asked if she didn't want them to come. She didn't respond. But her hands clenched into small fists. That night, after I tucked her in, I turned off the light. As I stepped back into the hallway, I heard it. A sound so soft I almost missed it. Not a word. A breath. A breath shaped like it wanted to be a word. I froze. I turned back. Lily sat upright in bed, her eyes wide open, fixed on me. I whispered her name. She didn't move. I waited, my heart pounding, loud in my ears. Then she lay back down. Silent again. I didn't sleep that night. Early the next morning, Mark called. He said they were delayed. Something came up. They'd come in the evening instead. I told him it was fine. It wasn't. As the days stretched on, Lily grew quieter, if that was even possible. She stayed close to me. Too close. At one point, she reached for my hand and held it tightly. Not playfully. Protectively. In the late afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Lily flinched. Hard. Her grip tightened, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked scared. Not of the door. Of what came after. I told her it was okay. Probably a neighbor. I opened the door. No one was there. Just an empty porch. When I closed it, Lily looked up at me and shook her head again. No, she whispered. One word. Clear. Sharp. Real. My entire body went cold. I dropped to my knees in front of her. Lily, did you just? She covered her mouth instantly, eyes wide with regret. Like she had broken a rule. I didn't push her. Didn't ask another question. But something inside me cracked open. That night, after putting her to bed, I sat alone, replaying that word again and again. No. Children don't speak by accident. And they don't stay silent without a reason. When the house finally went still, I heard soft footsteps outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. The handle didn't turn. But a small voice, barely louder than a thought, slipped under the door. Auntie. I sat up so fast my head spun. Yes. I whispered. There was a pause. Then the words that would change everything. They said you wouldn't hear me when they're gone. For a long time after Lily spoke, I didn't move. I sat upright in bed, the room dark, my heart beating so loudly I was sure she could hear it through the door. The word auntie echoed in my head like it didn't belong to this world. I whispered her name again. No answer. I waited. Counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then I heard soft footsteps moving away. I didn't follow her. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because something deep inside me knew this wasn't a moment to rush. Whatever Lily had done, it had cost her something. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. No words. No expressions that hinted at the night before. Just the same careful, watchful child. I tried to keep my voice normal as I made breakfast. Tried to keep my hands from shaking. I told myself children imagine things. That fear fills in gaps adults don't even notice. But then I saw it. A faint red mark around her wrist. Not fresh. Not bleeding. But not old enough to ignore. I asked her if she was hurt. She looked at her wrist, then at me. Then slowly pulled her sleeve down. That was her answer. The rest of the day crawled. Lily never left my side. If I moved rooms, she followed. If I sat, she leaned against me. Every sound outside the house made her tense. And every time my phone buzzed, her eyes flicked toward it before mine did. Like she already knew who it would be. Mark called just after noon. He sounded irritated. Said traffic was worse than expected. Said they might not make it until late evening. I told him Lily was fine. There was another pause. Then he asked, she hasn't talked, has she? The question landed too cleanly. Too prepared. I answered honestly. No. The lie tasted bitter. Good, he said. That's good. When the call ended, I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't planned to do. I locked the doors. All of them. I didn't announce it. Didn't explain. Lily noticed anyway. She relaxed just a little. That was all the confirmation I needed. In the afternoon, while Lily colored quietly at the table, I stepped into the hallway and called Hannah. She answered after the third ring. No words. Just breathing. I told her Lily was safe. that she was okay. Then gently I said, Hannah, is there something I should know? Her breathing changed. Shorter. Faster. I waited. Still no words. Then I heard a sound I hadn't heard from my sister in years. A sobi. Muffled. Controlled. Like she was trying not to be heard. I asked her if Lily was in danger. Her breathing broke. She tapped something on her phone. A message came through. Just 2 words. Please listen. That was all. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, my chest tight. Lily looked up at me from the table. She didn't ask anything. She just watched my face, reading it better than I could read my own thoughts. That evening, the sky darkened early. Lily refused dinner. She kept glancing at the door. I sat beside her and spoke softly, keeping my voice steady. Lily, I said, you can tell me things here. Her fingers tightened around the crayon. She shook her head. I waited. After a long moment, she whispered, barely moving her lips. They get mad when I say things. Who gets mad? I asked gently. She hesitated. Then she looked straight at me. Grown-ups. Something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. Not my parents. Not my dad. Grown-ups. I asked her what happens when they get mad. She swallowed. They say I make trouble. That night, I didn't put her in the guest room. I laid blankets on the floor in my bedroom and told her she could sleep there. She didn't argue. She didn't smile. She lay down and curled into herself, facing the door. I left the light on. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of Lily crying. Not loudly. Silently. Tears sliding down her face without a sound. I pulled her close and whispered that she was safe. Her small body shook. They told me, she said quietly, I'm only allowed to talk when they're gone. My heart dropped. Who told you that, Lily? She squeezed her eyes shut. My dad, she said. And the man who comes. The words felt wrong in the air. I asked her who the man was. She shook her head. He says names don't matter. I didn't sleep after that. At dawn my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. We're on our way. My hands went cold. I looked down at Lily. She was awake. Watching me. Don't let them take me, she whispered. Those words didn't sound like fear. They sounded like experience. I made a decision then. One that would change everything. I told Lily to pack her small bag. Told her we were going for a drive. She didn't ask where. She didn't need to. As we stepped outside, she grabbed my hand and said the thing that finally shattered my denial. They don't know, she whispered, that I hear everything. I didn't drive fast. Every instinct in my body told me to, but I forced myself to move calmly. Panic makes noise. And noise attracts attention. Lily sat beside me, her small hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't look out the window. She watched the mirrors. I asked her quietly if she knew where we were going. She shook her head. That was fine. Neither did I. I just knew where we weren't going. Back to her parents. After 20 minutes, I pulled into a grocery store parking lot. Busy enough to disappear in, quiet enough to think. I turned off the engine. Only then did Lily speak again. They're going to be mad, she said. I told her that being mad wasn't the same as being right. She nodded slowly, like she was storing the information for later use. I asked her what she meant when she said she heard everything. Her answer came without hesitation. They forget I'm there, she said. Because I don't talk. My chest tightened. She explained it simply. When adults thought silence meant absence, they stopped hiding things. They spoke freely. They argued. They planned. She heard her father talk on the phone late at night. She heard Hannah cry behind closed doors. She heard the other man laugh and say things that made her feel cold. I asked her what kinds of things. She paused. Then she said, they talk about you. The world narrowed. About me? She nodded. They say you're alone. That no one checks on you. I felt a chill run through me. I asked her why they talked about me. Her voice dropped lower. Because you notice things. I sat back against the seat, my pulse roaring in my ears. I had always been the observant one in my family. The one who asked questions. The one who didn't accept easy answers. Apparently, someone else had noticed that too. I asked Lily what they planned to do. She looked down. They said if something happens to you, she whispered, people will believe it was an accident. The word accident landed with terrifying weight. I thought about the strange knock at my door, the empty porch, the feeling of being watched. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. I asked Lily when they talked about this. She answered without emotion. Before I came to stay with you. I gripped the steering wheel. This visit wasn't a favor. It was a test. To see if I noticed. To see if Lily spoke. To see if silence held. I asked Lily one last question. Why did you talk to me? She looked up then, her eyes steady and serious in a way no 5-year-old's eyes should be. Because you listen, she said. And because if I didn't you would die. There it was. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just fact. I took her inside the store and bought snacks we didn't need, staying visible, staying public. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A former colleague. Someone who now worked in child services. I didn't explain everything. I didn't need to. I just said, I have a child with me who isn't safe. That was enough. While we waited, Lily leaned against me. They told my mom, she whispered, that if she talked, they'd take me away forever. I closed my eyes. Hannah's silence wasn't weakness. It was ransom. Her voice had been taken long before Lily's ever was. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. Where are you? I didn't reply. Minutes later, another. This isn't funny. I blocked the number. When my colleague arrived, Lily didn't resist when she held her hand. That told me everything. As they spoke quietly, I stepped aside and checked my phone. A new message came through. From an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. My hands shook. But this time fear wasn't alone. It had company. Resolve. That night, Lily didn't go back to her parents. And for the first time since I could remember, Hannah sent me a message longer than 2 words. It read. She did what I never could. Thank you for hearing her. Silence, I realized, isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of truth no one wants spoken. And Lily? She was never mute. She was waiting. The days that followed didn't feel dramatic. There were no sudden confrontations. No raised voices. Just pressure. Slow. Steady. Relentless. Lily stayed with me under temporary protective supervision. No announcements were made. No explanations were given to her parents beyond what the law required. That uncertainty did more damage than any argument ever could. Mark sent messages from different numbers. Some sounded worried. Some sounded angry. All of them sounded desperate. I didn't respond. Hannah sent short messages at first. Then longer ones. Still no voice. But her words carried weight now. She wrote about fear. The kind that teaches you how to disappear while still breathing. She wrote about being told, again and again, that speaking would only make things worse. I believed her. Because I had seen what silence protected. Lily changed slowly. She didn't start talking freely. That would have been too easy. But she began asking questions. Quietly, carefully, like she was testing whether the world still punished honesty. One evening, while we were sitting together, she asked me something that stopped my breath. Do people get in trouble for telling the truth? I told her the truth wasn't what got people in trouble. Power did. And power hates being seen. She thought about that for a long time. The investigation moved forward quietly. Adults talk when they think children can't hear. They also talk when they think no one believes children. That was the mistake. Records surfaced. Patterns emerged. The man Lily had mentioned wasn't a mystery anymore. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone who made himself useful by staying invisible. And he had been counting on silence. One afternoon, Lily was asked to sit with a trained specialist. No pressure. No demands. Just a question asked gently. Do you want to tell us anything? Lily looked at the floor. Then she said clearly, steadily, without fear. They said if I talked, bad things would happen. But bad things already happened. No one interrupted her. No one rushed her. She spoke slowly, choosing each word like it mattered. Because it did. She didn't describe moments. She described patterns. Who talked? Who watched? Who stayed quiet? And who told her that silence was safety? When she finished, the room stayed quiet. Not because no one knew what to say, but because everyone finally understood. Later that night, Lily sat beside me and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I told her she did something rare. She told the truth when it was easier to disappear. That's when Hannah finally spoke. Not to the investigators. Not to lawyers. To Lily. One sentence. Over the phone. Her voice was soft. Broken. Real. "I should have protected you," she said. "I'm sorry." Lily listened. Then she replied, "You did. You just did it quietly." That was the moment I realized something important. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's survival, until someone smaller, braver, decides it's time. Mark didn't come near us again. The messages stopped. The pressure shifted direction. And one morning, Lily asked me a question that felt like hope. "Can I talk now whenever I want?" I smiled through tears. "Yes," I told her. "You always could." She nodded. And for the first time, she laughed. Not loudly, but freely. Time didn't rush after the truth came out. It moved carefully, like it knew some wounds needed patience, not pressure. Lily stayed with me, not because the world suddenly became safe, but because safety had finally been named. And once something is named, it can no longer hide. Hannah began writing to me every day. Not long messages. Not explanations. Just honesty. She wrote about how silence had been taught to her like a rule. How fear becomes routine when it's rewarded. How survival can look like obedience from the outside. She wrote that Lily had saved her too. Because when a child speaks, adults are forced to listen. Even when they don't want to. Lily started school again under a new routine. No pressure to talk. No labels. Just space. At first she spoke only to me. Then to one teacher. Then one day, to another child who dropped a pencil and looked embarrassed. Small steps. Real ones. She asked questions constantly. About rules. About fairness. About why adults lie when children tell the truth. I didn't give her perfect answers. I gave her honest ones. The investigation didn't end quickly. It rarely does. But consequences don't need to be loud to be real. Access was removed. Influence was broken. Silence stopped being useful. Mark tried once more to reach out. One message. "You've ruined everything." I didn't respond. Because the truth is, nothing worth protecting was ruined. Something harmful was simply exposed. One evening, Lily and I sat together quietly. She was drawing. Not carefully, not cautiously. Bold lines. Bright colors. She looked up at me and asked something that felt like the final test. "If I tell people what happened, will they see me differently?" I thought for a long time before answering. "Yes," I said. "Some will." She nodded. "And will that be bad?" "No," I said. "It will be honest." She smiled at that. Later, Hannah came to visit. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. She sat beside Lily and held her hand. No rules. No fear. Just presence. Before she left, Hannah looked at me and wrote one last thing on her phone. "Thank you for breaking the quiet." I realized then that silence had been passed down like an inheritance. And Lily had refused it. Weeks later, Lily stood in front of a small group of people who were trained to listen. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform. She simply spoke. And when she finished, she didn't look for approval. She looked relieved. That was the sound of choosing to live. People often ask me how I knew to believe her. The answer is simple. Children don't invent patterns. They survive them. Silence doesn't mean nothing happened. Sometimes it means something happened for too long. Lily wasn't mute. She was waiting for someone to stay. And when her parents left, and she finally spoke, she didn't just save my life. She changed the direction of her own. People think the end of a story sounds like relief. Like a deep breath. Like the moment everything settles. But the truth is, endings don't arrive with noise. They arrive with change. Slow, ordinary change. Months passed. Life didn't return to what it was before, and I stopped wanting it to. Some things, once broken open, can't be put back the same way. And that's not always a loss. Lily grew. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But in ways that mattered. She talked now. Not all the time. Not to everyone. But when she did, her words were deliberate. Careful. Honest. She never filled silence just to escape it. She had learned that quiet wasn't dangerous anymore. One evening as we sat together, she asked me something simple. Do you think I'll forget? I asked her what she meant. The things I heard, she said. The things that happened. I told her the truth. No, I said. But you won't always feel them the same way. She thought about that. Then she said something that stayed with me. That's okay. I don't want to forget everything. Just the scary parts. Healing doesn't erase memory. It changes ownership. Hannah changed too. She still didn't speak much. But when she did, it was no longer fear holding her voice back. It was choice. She started therapy. She started writing, not messages but stories. She told me silence had been the only place she felt safe for most of her life. Now, she was learning how to step out of it without disappearing. One afternoon she spoke to me, really spoke. Not many words. Just enough. I didn't know how to be loud, she said. But I knew how to endure. That mattered. Because endurance kept Lily alive long enough to be heard. The legal process reached its quiet conclusions. Not public. Not dramatic. But final. Access was permanently cut. Control dissolved. The kind of people who rely on silence lose power when no one is willing to carry it anymore. Sometimes justice whispers. And that's enough. Life slowly filled in the empty spaces. Lily started making friends. Real ones. She laughed more freely now. One day, she corrected a teacher gently. Another day, she stood up for a classmate. Not loudly, but clearly. That was her strength. Clarity. On the anniversary of the day she first stayed with me, Lily asked to bake a cake. Not for a birthday. For remembering, she said. When I asked what she wanted to remember, she answered without hesitation. The day I decided to talk. We sat together that night, eating cake, listening to the house settle into its familiar quiet. A safe quiet. The kind that doesn't demand anything. Before going to bed, Lily looked at me and said something that finally closed the circle. They were wrong about one thing. I asked her what. They said no one listens to kids. She smiled. But you did. I realized then that saving a life doesn't always look like pulling someone out of danger. Sometimes it looks like staying still long enough to hear a whisper. Lily didn't save my life because she spoke. She saved it because she trusted me with the truth. And trust, once given, is louder than fear ever was. Silence didn't win in the end. Understanding did. And that's how our story ends. Not with noise, but with choice.